So you're retiring next year, or at least you hope to retire next year. You're in your mid-60s and you want to know if the plan that you've worked your whole life together is actually going to work. Well, that's what we're going to cover in today's video. It's the third installment of our financial planning examples, where we follow a sample couple from their 40s to their 50s, and now they're in their 60s. And they would come see us and make sure that the plan works as they sail off into a confident, fulfilling retirement. So let's get right into it, part 3. So we're back with John and Jane Doe. They are now in their mid-60s and they are ready to enjoy their retirement. But we're going to give them a little checkup to make sure that they're comfortable with their situation. So John at this point is making $90,000 a year and Jane is up to $200,000. They're still living in Maryland. And even though they have children, we're not going to plan for any more care. They are self-sufficient. So here's where we go and put some of their inputs in, or their expectations for retirement. Retire at 65, which is this year for both of them. They don't plan on moving to a state unless you're in California, Maryland, or maybe some other states like that. Maryland's a pretty expensive state to retire in. So as we look at our goals, if we can expect to spend more money in retirement and we're actually being conservative with our returns, it makes for a more confident plan. We want to overshoot expenses and undercut investment returns. So if we miss a little bit, it gives you some buffer. So here we've got what their goals are in retirement. You can see we've got a lot of different things to choose from. Basic living expense, they need $10,000 a month after tax. So net of taxes drops into the investment account or the checking account the first of every month, and that should cover their basic living needs. On top of that, they also need, depending on their ages, money for healthcare costs. This system uses actual income, Medicare supplement, and it comes up with a very accurate number. If you don't know what that is, we can get there pretty close for you. One of the other ones for John and Jane Doe, as we have found with folks as they get older, priorities can change. So the focus here might be leaving $300,000 in today's dollars for a future generation. Could be for grandkids, could be for their kids, could be a mix of all three. Giving back later in age, we usually don't see that at 60s, maybe 70s and 80s. People kind of change their priorities, but we'll put it in here in this plan and see if it works. John wants to buy a boat or some other major purchase for $100,000, and they plan on traveling for at least the next 15 years. So those are the goals for John and Jane Doe. Now we have to put their inputs in for what they have and what they've accumulated over their lifetime, and then we're going to test it. That's kind of part 3 of this equation, to make sure it works. And if it doesn't, how do we tweak it to make sure that they're on a good path? So this couple's planning on waiting to take Social Security to 67. We can play with the numbers and do it earlier or later. If you didn't get the first 2, John being a teacher, he has access to a pension. And no, John and Jane Doe aren't real. This is just kind of a mix-up of a few different clients that we work with, some things that we see pretty often. So now we're going to go into their investment assets. We're going to look at Jane's 401k, which she's contributing to until she retires. John's got a 403b, same story. They have a rainy day fund, a couple of Roths that have grown over the years, a taxable investment account, and a traditional IRA. That was the result of a rollover from a previous job where Jane worked. It adds up to $1.68 million of liquid investment assets. Liquid meaning investable assets, stocks, bonds, cash, things like that. Also in here, we've put their actual portfolio allocations for what they have, which impacts the way that the plan works on the back end. More on that to come. Here is a section that we call other assets. It's where we can put a home, a rental property, a business. We can assign it a low expected or high value. So if you're not really sure what your business is worth, for an example, we can put 3 different levels and tell you what you can do in retirement based on which of those 3 things you end up netting. In this case, they're both employed, they just have a house, and it's not funding any goals because they're not going to sell their home and be homeless. They plan on living there or an equivalent type home. Here's the liabilities. John and Jane Doe, they've lived in the same home in this example for a very long time. Their house is paid off. You don't need a paid off house. You don't need $1.6 million of liquid assets for a successful retirement. They don't hurt. Sometimes it takes more. Sometimes you can do it for a fraction less. It really depends on your unique circumstances and what expectations you have in retirement. So the net worth in this example is just shy of $2.5 million. A lot of times when we get to this point, folks will look at me and say, Joe, what do you think? Is that a good number? Well, it's a great number if the spending expectations in retirement are in line with the resources. So really the spending has a large influence on whether the plan is going to work or not. You could have 10 times more money and still not have a successful retirement if you're spending beyond your resources allow. So now we're going to jump right into, and we're moving through this quickly. It takes a little bit more time in person, but I just want to give you a sense of what expectations are for financial planning with us. What we're going to do now is see if John and Jane Doe will have a successful retirement. We're looking for a success rate of 65 or 70% plus. All right, more is better, but too much can be too much. Maybe they're not spending enough. How do we come up with these simulations? Well, we're taking actual portfolios that they have, and we're back testing it over real world examples, and we're mixing it 1,000 randomized lifetimes. So we're predicting the future here, which is a little bit messy at times, but this is as accurate as we can get. We can't do average return numbers because you're running the risk of a sequence of return risk, meaning a couple of bad years in the beginning could throw off the whole thing. So this incorporates good, bad, and everything in between. We'll jump right into what the results are. All right, so 78%, is that a good result? It's a very strong number. If you're watching this and you're an A+ student, you probably want to score like 98%. And the risk of that is that maybe you're not enjoying the amount of money that you've got to its fullest. Maybe you're sitting coach on airplanes when really you could be flying first class. Or there's a vacation that you haven't taken with your family that you can afford to. You just feel like you can't spend the money on it when you know that, or we know, you've got more than enough for it. 78% is a very good number, and this isn't a one and done. We want to make sure that it works throughout retirement. I'm going to jump into one more scenario, and this is where we play around with the numbers and the plan kind of comes to life. And we're going to be able to give you a couple of what-if scenarios, or rather, you tell us some what-if scenarios, and we'll see how it works or it doesn't. Let me show you right now. All right, so what we're in right now is one of a few different tools that we have access to, and this one's called the Play Zone. So as I scroll down here, we can take the recommended scenario and then play with it a little bit more in order to kind of come up with some different talking points that you can then go home and make a decision. For example, if John and Jane Doe want to spend more money in retirement, how much does it affect the plan? Well, going from $120,000 a year up to $145,000 really compromises the plan. It doesn't work. So let's back that down a little bit and say it's 132. Yep, there we go. And again, it really affects the plan. So if you want to spend an extra $1,000 a month net of taxes in retirement, maybe we need to delay retirement by 2 years each. So spending an extra $1,000 a month net of taxes, you're going to have to work 2 years for each spouse more. Is it worth 2 more years of work in order to spend $1,000 a month more in retirement? Well, that I can't answer for you. I can give you some guidance based on conversations that we'll have. But that's really a decision that you get in the car, you drive home, and you look at each other and you say, what do you think? Is it worth working 2 more years to spend $1,000? Or maybe we spend less money and feel more confident in our retirement. Those are decision points that you now have because you have the information that we can give you. So if you're interested in what your retirement plan looks like and you want some confidence to see what works, what doesn't, maybe a couple of different scenarios, feel free to give us a call. We do this all day, every day. We did name our business Hartford Retirement Planners after all. And we really enjoy the confidence and clarity that our clients get by going through this process. If you're still watching and you enjoyed this 3-part series, thank you very much. And thank you for watching.